So this particular work package was led by Marble Arch Caves UNESCO Global Geopark. The geopark is jointly managed by Fermanagh and Omagh District Council in Northern Ireland and Cavan County Council in the Republic of Ireland. It was one of the first geoparks to be formed in 2001, and in 2008, when it spanned across the international border into County Cavan, it became the first transnational global geopark anywhere in the world. So we work very closely both with the Geological Survey of Northern Ireland and the Geological Survey of Ireland. Within the Drifting Apart project, Fermanagh and Omagh District Council led within the Marble Arch Caves input into the project, and we worked very closely in cooperation with Cavan County Council and the two geological surveys within the island of Ireland. The objectives of this work package were to research, identify and promote the common geological heritage of the Northern Periphery and Arctic Programme area, and to develop quality material in the development of interpretation regarding partners' geological heritage to enhance visitor experience. So I'm going to pass over to Kirsten, who is going to present really the fundamental part of this work package that all of the other objectives evolved from.
Other way.
Other way?
Yeah.
Change this.
To know
That way?
Yeah.
That doesn't really fit, does it?
Does it?
I like it, don't I? Yeah, it's just far too
Do
big.
you not have ears?
It doesn't reach my ears. That better.
That's it, yeah.
Ah, genius. Right. That's going to fall off. Back on. Okay. Don't know what to say after that introduction, Graham, I have to say, but anyway. Okay, so the Drifting Apart storyline was really one of the fundamental parts of the project to begin with. I suppose as a geologist, and any geologist in the room will hopefully agree with me on this, I like to see myself as a bit of a storyteller, with the rocks actually being the pages of the book of that story. Patrick's already alluded to this, but the rocks can tell us lots of stories. They can tell us about past climates, they can tell us about past environments, they can tell us about past life, and of course they can tell us about dynamic earth processes that happened many, many millions of years ago. So one of the first outputs of the project was actually to produce the storyline, weaving in all of the information from the individual geoparks, whether they be existing UNESCO Global Geoparks, aspiring geoparks, or even potential geoparks. Putting all of those bits of information together, but at the same time making sure they're all interconnected and each one of them retaining their individuality. So you've seen this map many times already today, and I'm sure you'll see it many more times as the day goes on, but this is just to give you an idea of the spread of the different areas that we're actually working with. There are 13 different geoparks, aspiring geoparks, interested areas. They span thousands of kilometres. They go from Stonehammer Geopark in Canada in the very far west, right over to Kenazero National Park in Russia. So this was a really huge area to cover. So to get a storyline that was first of all easy to understand by members of the public, and secondly one that actually made sense, was somewhat of a challenge. The landscapes that we had to look at were all very, very different. They varied from beautiful sea cliffs to tranquil lakes, to world-famous rock formations, to watery underworlds, and many, many others. But while they often look very, very different, a lot of these are actually connected, and that's something that we have tried to put out as part of the Drifting Apart storyline. So, how do we connect all of these together? Well, I'm going to take you to what is probably the most boring slide of the whole presentation, and this is to look at a tectonic map of the world as it stands today, because plate tectonic theory is really at the heart of the Drifting Apart story. So what is plate tectonic theory? If any of you aren't familiar with what it is, what it really assumes is that the Earth's crust, or the outermost layer of the Earth, is broken up into large tectonic plates, and these all move. And as they move, new plate is created, or old plate is destroyed, or sometimes they just move past each other. But really, this is the fundamental processes that has led to us all drifting apart. Now, plate tectonic theory is actually relatively new. It was only really first talked about at the beginning of the 20th century, and it was only in the 1960s that this theory was really mainstream. And in fact, it was one of our Geopark partners in their area, a scientist who came from there, that helped to develop this theory fully. But the plate tectonic theory is really what has given us the drifting apart name, because as all those plates move, that is how we have come to have very different landscapes, but it's how we've also been connected in the past. So how does this all link into the drifting apart storyline? Well, one of the things that we did at the very start was to contact all of the different partner areas, whether they be geoparks, aspiring geoparks, or interested areas. We asked them all to give us a geological summary of their area and to ask them how they've been involved or how they can see themselves being included in the storyline with regards to drifting apart. We got hundreds of pages of information back as a result of that, and then the arduous task began of trying to really distill all of that into a few pages to make it very easy to understand for the public, and also to give recognition to all of those areas. One of the outputs of that was to look at the different plate tectonic maps. Now, these look very different in Earth today, and what these maps show is what the Earth would have looked like through geological time. Now, I'm showing you them all running together, so they look a little bit like an animation, but it tells us an awful lot about how we've changed over time. And as you see as we go through, we have seen oceans destroyed and created, we've seen mountains being built and eroded, we've also seen tropical climates, desert climates, widespread volcanic eruptions, and even in some cases, we've actually seen rocks that are more commonly found on the moon than they are on Earth, and we've also found evidence of ancient asteroid impacts. So the drifting apart storyline is extremely diverse, but it shows we were once all connected, in fact, several times, and we're still drifting apart as we speak today. The drifting apart story began 3 billion years ago, but of course we're still on our journey, and there's no better place to see that than Iceland itself. We've already seen the image now twice of the bridge between continents as one of the perfect places to demonstrate, number one, plate tectonic theory, but number two, the drifting apart storyline in its elements. But the storyline was only the beginning. It really was a springboard for a lot of the other elements of the drifting apart project. And it's been used as a basis to not only deliver work package 3 that Helen will continue to talk about, and Simon, but also a lot of the other elements of the project. So I'm going to finish up there, but if anybody does want to read the drifting apart storyline, it is available on the website, so have a look. If you want any more information, just go there, and if you have any other comments to make, then do please just come and chat to one of us. So thank you very much.
So in tandem with the development of the drifting apart storyline, a working document was produced which pulled together ideas and best practice examples from all partner areas within the project. So this document provided guidance and inspiration for all partners, but in particular some of the aspiring geoparks, which prior to this project had little to zero interpretation infrastructure in their area. It has acted as an effective way to document the interactive outputs from each partner throughout the work package that we'll see some more of shortly. And the final document will be made available to all aspiring geoparks, UNESCO Global Geoparks, and similar organisations. But what actually is interpretation? It isn't just facts, figures, and pretty photographs. It is how interest, value, significance, and meaning of heritage is communicated to people. It is a learning activity which communicates the science, studies, and concepts behind the heritage. It provokes the audience to think for themselves. It can take many different forms, again, which we'll go into in more detail shortly. But just because an area has a couple of interpretation panels, it doesn't mean that that heritage is being interpreted properly. So why is access and interpretation important to geoparks in similar areas? So most people can see that this landscape is both wild and beautiful simply by looking at it. But without developed access, places like this would only be available for intrepid hill walkers to explore these fascinating landscapes. Without interpretation, the generalist will be unable to glean much more from this landscape other than its beauty. I'm aware I'm in a room with a high percentage of geologists and specialists, but when I talk about most people, I'm talking about people like myself who do not have specialist geological knowledge. So when most people visit an area like this, they'll be unable to tell that this single landscape documents an unbroken 8 million year geological history. That apart from humans, glaciers have had the biggest impact on this landscape. That it is littered with tombs and monuments dating back to Neolithic man. And in much more recent terms, that a major conservation project has been carried out to protect the geological and natural heritage. So if you like, interpretation is a key that can be used to unlock geological, cultural and natural secrets from the landscape. There are countless ways of interpreting your landscape. Outdoor signs and panels along with indoor signs and panels are probably the most common, but there are plenty of others such as interpretive centres, interactive displays, publications, audiovisual presentations. One of maybe the most effective terms of interpretation when delivered correctly is live interpretation such as guided walks and talks, as it can be easily tailored to different audiences as they happen. Arts and performances, another type of live interpretation, and multimedia and websites. From the storyline, each partner area identified different sites which actually told the story, the drifting apart story. From that, an interactive transnational visitor trail has been developed, as you can see here. Within the map, each partner site that has been developed, whether that is outdoor sites, visitor centres or trails, has been plotted on the map, and you can click into each of these points to learn more about that particular site or centre. And can give you a little example of how it works. So just for an example, we've already seen one of the sites that we are going to see tomorrow, and this is the second one in Reykjanes UNESCO Global Geopark. So as you can see, this is the mud pools and stream vents that we're going to see within the peninsula, and I won't attempt to pronounce it. And I will pass on to Simon, who's going to go through some of the outputs from this particular work package within the project.
Is that alright? This is the most uncomfortable thing I've ever worn in my life.
No, it's not.
I'm not willing to find out what's worse. So as Helen said, I'm going to go through some of the outputs that we've seen through the work package 3. And also as Helen said, there's a number of different forms that interpretation comes in. So thankfully we're going to go through a few different types. Not going to exhaust all of them, and we're not going to go through every single thing that was done because we've been here for a long time. So just going to go through some highlights. So start off with, as Helen said, the most popular vector which is used for interpretation, which is outdoor panels. And start off with an example from magma. This panel is in an area which was being commonly used by walkers but had a whole history of mining in the area. It wasn't being interpreted, and so a lot of the people, although may have been walking around there, weren't gaining any information from this place, and so this panel is helping people to actually find out what they can from that area, since there's such a rich heritage to it. And you'll note there dual languages so that it's explainable to both the people from the country as well as international visitors as well. And then from our own homegrown area, this is a panel we installed to try and interpret the Coca Dyke, one of the few areas where we can sort of interpret volcanic activity within the Marble Arch Geopark in a really scenic area called Gort McConnell. And apologies for a fairly poor picture, but a picture of a panel was installed in the Peripheral Geopark as well, and again you can see the use of the geo-languages there for both homegrown and international visitors. And a panel was installed in the K-Box Aspiring Geopark there in an area which didn't really have any real interpretation of the geological heritage of that space, so a real milestone there too. Other examples of outdoor interpretation, so it's not just limited to panels. So an example of an outdoor information centre has been designed for the Reykjanes Geopark. A really amazing engraved bench in Stonehammer, which to try and interpret the geological heritage of the area, it utilised pictures of the continents at the period of time that the landscape was formed, as well as the processes that helped to create it. And then these little interpretive posts that both ourselves and the Causeway Coast and Glens used that help interpret the landscape, but in a slightly less obtrusive way than panels sometimes do. And also kids absolutely adore these because they love opening them up and finding out what's inside them. Access, as Helen mentioned before, is a real great way to allow people into these areas, but in a sustainable way so that they can actually see and feel and touch the heritage of the area. So this was a really amazing piece of work that was done by the guys at Causeway Coast and Glens to try and allow people access to Fair Head, which is this huge headland that sticks out from Ballycastle on the Antrim coast. It means a lot to me because it looks out towards Rathlin Island, where I spent a hell of a lot of my childhood. And it wouldn't have been previously accessible apart from people that would have fancied trespassing. But these guys opened it up and created these amazing walking routes which showcase the geological heritage, the cultural heritage, biodiversity in a really amazing place. So that was a brilliant piece of work. And there's another picture just to showcase how amazing it looks. And you'll see those little interpretive posts there that they painstakingly installed all the way along the routes. And back to Marble Arch, then we enhanced some access routes through Gort McConnell, which is this incredibly scenic area of the Geopark, which is in the foothills of Coca Mountain, which has this amazing diversity of geology, of biodiversity, of cultural heritage. A really brilliant spot, which was open before, but didn't have really that much of a wealth of interpretation within it of any aspect. So it was a real opportunity for us to try and showcase one of the most beautiful parts of the Geopark and show off what kind of heritage it had. This is one of the maps that we produced for the panels. And just another example of that amazing landscape. Indoor panels, another medium. A good example there from the Northwest Highlands, showcasing the landscape of the area, and then a geological timeline from Magma Geopark, and an amazing example of what really high quality photography can do. I mean, that's really jaw-dropping. That'll make people stop and look at that and read the information on it. A very good example from Kappa. Publications are another medium which can be used, and this is a great little example from the Northwest Highlands of Pebble Roofs, where they utilised animations that were done by children that would help interpret driving and walking routes throughout the Geopark. These can be given out to visitors, and it's one way of engaging the communities and getting them to interpret the landscape and then feed that out to people that are visiting. A publication that was created by the Causeway Coast and Glens to interpret the Gobbins coastal walk, which is one of the newest additions to the geotourism product of Northern Ireland. And this geo booklet for children, which was created by Kenazir National Park, to try and showcase its 4.5 billion year geological history. And geocentres were enhanced in many different ways. This is at Lochaber, where these lightbox panels were created to try and explain a lot of the geological processes that have gone on in the area. This, one of my favourite things, that they look just like a sandbox, and in all honesty I just thought that this was sand with like food colour in it or something, but obviously that will get quickly destroyed by a bunch of kids. But it uses augmented reality from an Xbox 360, which judges the topography of the sand and then creates the colours on the sand. So as you move that big red lump and then fold it down, it will go into yellow and then green and then blue, to showcase the topography, so it could teach kids as well as adults, who I'm sure would love to have a go at it, about how rainfall can move through landscapes and fluid move through landscapes as well as volcanic activity. That's a really great example there. And the visitor centre in Transnational National Park, the geological interpretation there was also enhanced. It's just a lovely photograph of the visitor centre there. And back in Marble Arch, we created these geological rock trails, which we're testing to create, I will tell you firsthand. And actually this photograph was taken before we got it fixed, because the contractor actually put those two rocks in the wrong place. Because the panel there is specifically laid out in a way in which then they make sense. But we took rocks from different geological areas throughout the geopark, more or less the four corners, and then laid them out in an area whereby people can follow the storyline of the geopark in a few feet rather than travelling all around it. And it just brings it all together. And online, the Drift in the Park website is there, it's been created, and now you can access the Transnational visitor trail as well as the storyline on there. And throughout the life of the project, it's helped provide updates on the outputs that people have created. So just to go over everything then, so the outcomes, the storyline is being created, the best practice interpretation guidelines are being created, the Transnational visitor trail is there. On-site interpretation and access has been enhanced in 62 instances, and geo-information centres have been enhanced in 16 instances. And I hope that is the right word for questions in Iceland.